everything else just resolved. My last biopsy was in December of 2022, and it was the first time I ever had a benign result. I felt, wow, I really did my part, and it really helped out so much. But it wasn't just the cancer that it helped out. It was definitely my metabolic health. But the joint pain's pretty much gone. The arthritis in my fingers, it was really devastating to be diagnosed with arthritis in your 40s. My mom and dad both have arthritis. And so I just thought it was just this hereditary thing, but they were diagnosed later in life. And so for me to be diagnosed at 40 is pretty devastating. And to be able to go to a function now and not have my thoughts completely 100% revolving around food and actually being present with my family and my friends, it is liberating. I like that word that you used.
Jenny, welcome. Thank you for doing this. If you don't mind, where are you located? What part of the world are you in?
I am in Bakersfield, California.
Okay. I've driven through Bakersfield, and I know one other person who lives there, but welcome. Glad to have you here. Thank you for doing this. Now, I guess I was just kind of reading a little background, but I guess I said you did some sort of cancer and hopefully it's gone resolved and stuff like that. So maybe just walk us through your background. Tell us like a little bit of who you are and what happened and how your health evolved and all that, if you don't mind.
Oh, absolutely. So my name's Jenny Culbertson. I am 51 years old. I am a nurse. I'm a former hospital executive, getting ready to move into clinical executive here soon. My cancer diagnosis started in 2017. I was diagnosed with vaginal cancer, had surgery. Thought at that point we probably got it all, but I always remained in a precancerous stage. And then in 2021, it came back. And at that point, I knew I needed to do something. I just couldn't keep relying on surgeries, and this path was going to get very ugly very quick. I'm in a support group for women that deal with this, and just listening to their journeys, I didn't want to be one of them. I know I already am one of them, but I didn't want to go down that path of having vaginectomies and vulvectomies, and I didn't want all of that. And so I started researching what is the best cancer diet, and Googled and did YouTube videos, and intermittent fasting came up. So that started with Dr. Fung and watched a lot of Dr. Fung videos, and then which led into Dr. Berg and Dr. Eckberg. And then it led into you and Dr. Chafee. And I just ended up going at that point. I spent probably a good 6 weeks just really doing my research. And the end of September of 21, I ended up going keto and dirty keto. It wasn't a clean keto. It took me a really long time to get to that point. And then kept on keto until after treatment was done. I had to do some immunotherapy from February until May of 2022. And then in May, I'm like, that's it. I'm done. I'm done even just doing keto. I'd really moved to a clean keto, but I wanted to just go straight carnivore at that point. And I do allow a few things. I do a little bit of cheese, and I have heavy cream. And there's the occasional, like my son got married this past weekend. And so, of course, I ate what everybody else was eating that night because it's not like there was a whole lot of carnivore options at the wedding. But I leave that very limited, and I don't do that very often at all because I know I'm going to pay the price for it for probably a week or two, just with everything else that will happen. But everything else just resolved. My last biopsy was in December of 2022, and it was the first time I ever had a benign result. And I felt, wow, I really did my part, and it really helped out so much. But it wasn't just the cancer that it helped out. It was definitely my metabolic health. Around that same time that the second cancer diagnosis came in 2021, because I have Hashimoto's, I had seen my endocrinologist and was just like, I'm tired. I'm so tired, and I don't know what's wrong with me. And I thought for sure it was my thyroid. It wasn't my thyroid. Had me go see my general practice doctor. They drew a bunch of labs. She said, I don't see anything wrong with you except for your iron deficiency. Okay, something's got to be wrong because I just feel terrible. Thank you so much. I see that. But I felt terrible. I was so tired, and my blood pressure was starting to creep up. My weight was definitely up. I was sitting at right around 194 to 196 pounds at that point. Just so fatigued, joint pain, arthritis in my fingers. My knees hurt, my feet hurt, everything was just hurting. I was just tired. And it was really strange. As soon as I got rid of all of the refined grains and the sugars, my joints started feeling better, and the weight didn't come off fast, and I knew it wasn't. through all of the research that I had done, I knew that things had to heal before the weight loss would come. The weight loss really didn't start happening until 2022. Probably right around May is when I really started to see just a big change. And it was really when I went carnivore that I really started to see that change. And now I'm over 40 pounds lighter and I feel fabulous.
First of all, congratulations for finding out something to work for you. I'm glad you're doing better. That's got to be wonderful, because often when cancer comes in, depending on the stage and aggressiveness of the form, it can go very south very quickly. And particularly when there's a recurrence. Recurrences usually indicate, hey, there's some real problems here. So the fact that it is now, you said the first time gone, whether it's the diet or something else, we can't say definitively, but it certainly seems to help. And I've seen other stories similar to this. I'm glad you mentioned your metabolic health wasn't that particularly good, because a lot of people will make the claim that cancer really is a metabolic disease. There's guys like Thomas Seyfried at Boston University that's their sort of belief, rather than it's this sort of genetic problem. That if you look into the physiology of cancer, a lot of times we spent a lot of years learning the human genome so that we could do these treatments, and yet we're not seeing much improvement with that. It was like a multi-billion-dollar, I don't want to say waste of money, but the cancer benefits from that have been minimal to none. And I'm just wondering, prior to this, 10 years ago, whatever, what was the diet like? Was it just standard, whatever? And just as a hospital executive, it's interesting. I want to talk about that a little bit, but tell me about your years past. What was the diet like? Did you ever try losing weight, gaining weight? How did that work?
Tried everything. So I was very athletic as a child and even into my early adulthood, probably till I was right around 19. I was an artistic roller skater. So that's like the ice skating, but on roller skates, where you do the jumps and the spins. So there's this expectation that you maintain a certain body type. You've got to be able to get your body up off the ground. And definitely struggled with a form of an eating disorder at that point, whether it was not eating at all or eating and then using laxatives after that. And at 19, I had quit skating, got married super young to a Marine. And as a 19-year-old, moved to Hawaii. And then the weight started coming on at that point. I think it was just lack of exercise plus entering into really an adulthood with a poor diet. But I really was drawn to carbohydrates, anything sugar, candy, just like chocolate. Oh my goodness, love chocolate. Any kind of pastry, loved it. And that pretty much stayed my diet probably through up until I decided to change my lifestyle in 2021. I tried everything. Weight Watchers. I tried the cabbage diet. I tried the grapefruit diet. I've tried it all. And I actually even, probably in 98, I even tried the Atkins diet for a very short period of time. And that was the only thing that did work. That took my weight from 246 down to 225, give or take a little bit at that point. And I maintained at that 225, but went off of it at that point. I don't know why I did, and I probably should have stuck to it. My health would have definitely had a different outcome, and I would have spent probably my early adulthood being much healthier than I was. I don't consider myself healthy, but up until 2021, I think if I had stuck to that, it would have been a big help for me.
Yeah, and correct. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to correct me. So you were at one point 220-ish. And now you're 150 or something like that? Is that where you're at now?
Yeah, at 150. I go between 150 to 154 is the most, and I just fluctuate in that 4-pound range right there.
Okay, good for you.
Yeah. But I've done it all. I've hired trainers and I've hired coaches. I went through in 2019, 2020, went through 3 health coaches where you pay all this money. It's expensive, $600, $900 to have them design a meal plan for you. And none of that was working either. And I think it just was like so frustrating. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? I'm supposed to be eating this sweet potato and I'm supposed to be eating these green beans and it's not working.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I guess the side, because you said you were a hospital administrator or hospital executive, and now you're going to become a clinical executive. And I'm not sure what the distinction is. That maybe you can share that with me. But I'm just wondering, because I spent a lot of time in hospitals as an orthopedic surgeon. I was every day in the hospital, basically, either seeing my clinic or doing surgery, of course. And I'm just wondering, first of all, let me ask you, so during your health journey, particularly with the cancer, Hashimoto's, endocrinology, I'm sure gynecology, oncology, all those different departments, had anybody suggested you, hey, try a low-carb diet or any kind of dietary intervention? Was that ever even discussed at all?
Never discussed one time. when in 2021, when I had the second round of cancer, I told my gynecologist, she's a GYN oncologist. I told her at that point, I'm like, hey, I'm going to try this low carb thing. She's go for it. She didn't fight me on it at all. She's really pro, make sure you're active and make sure you're exercising, make sure you're getting your immune system up. And every time I've gone in since then, I'm telling her like, hey, I'm low carb. And she's great. But nobody one time ever suggested, hey, you need to be looking at a different diet. And what's even weird is looking back at my labs, as tired as I was, nobody ever even considered drawing anything. Where's my hemoglobin A1C sitting? None of that. My endocrinologist drew it. It was a little bit elevated, but she never even at that point said, hey, I think you need to be looking at some diet options. Your hemoglobin A1C is creeping up. Not one time.
Yeah, and it's had they perhaps gotten a fasting insulin or something like that, they might have seen, hey, you're hyperinsulinemic now. And we know that insulin is a growth factor. And so what grows, and there's certainly association between that and high insulin levels, cancer. And so it's one of those things where we're doing too little too late, or we're missing the boat, or we're not doing the right things. And to be fair, when I was practicing an orthopedic surgeon, even when I was clued in on nutrition, I really didn't have any support to do it. I'll tell you my own particular thing. Said, hey, I want to do some lifestyle medicine as an orthopedic surgeon. And the administration just told me, no, we're not paying you for that because you're making a lot of money as an orthopedic surgeon. That was the subtext is basically, hey, keep operating. Because I was the busiest surgeon in the hospital. I was cranking through surgeries, and that's very profitable for a hospital. And when you say, hey, I'd like to dial back and do some lifestyle counseling, I was canceling surgeries. And so that didn't go over very well. And it opened my eyes as to some of the incentives or disincentives for doing what I think is the right thing in many cases. And what prompted this shift between hospital administration or hospital executive to what do you mean by clinical executive?
So I was a chief nursing officer for 6.5 years from 2016 until 2022. And I worked at a system here in Bakersfield, California, and then I moved to Oregon. And then that same system, I moved up to Washington. I was in Washington for 2 years and then ended up moving home. My daughter had a baby and decided it was time for me to be a grandma and be close to my family again. So I came on home, and in the interim between my new job that I'm starting in 2 weeks, and this job, I took a school nurse job. So I just stepped away from executive leadership altogether. But I miss it. I miss being part of solutions and being part of problem solving and being there for patients and staff. And so I ended up taking a job with a large federally qualified healthcare system here in Bakersfield. It's actually in Bakersfield and Fresno. So I'll be working with them starting in a couple of weeks as a director of nursing practice, clinical quality, and patient experience. I'm thrilled. I can't wait to get back into the leadership role.
Good for you. I'm glad you enjoy that. And I'm just wondering now with the knowledge that you have, and again, you can't extrapolate your experience to the whole of the population, and I've seen now, thousands of these similar stories, and I'm very convinced that at the very least, nutrition plays a bigger role than we give it credit for. And obviously, if you walk in there and say, hey, everybody with cancer needs to go on a carnivore diet, they're going to laugh you out of the room. It's one of those things, but is that something you have an aspiration to impact maybe the nutrition of the hospital in a way to say, let's at least cut out the garbage? And I don't know like I said, I'm not sure where you're going to be working, but any thought about that?
Oh gosh, I so wish. This has become such a passion for me. I actually ended up signing up for the American Nutrition Association for their certified ketogenic nutrition specialist course. I'm done with the coursework. I just got to sit for my exam now because it's just really has just become a passion. Anybody I can talk to about it, I will talk to about it. I'm very open when people ask me questions about it. I try not to preach too much because people get very offended. They get so offended, especially when you tell them that you don't eat vegetables. They think it's like the end of the world. And how do you get all your vitamins? And trying to explain to them that you actually don't need vegetables for your vitamins. They just get so frustrated with me. But I'm really hoping at some point I can take this passion to some form of a coaching of some sort. I would love to be able to be part of something in the hospital systems. I think you know this as well, just being a doctor. It's so hard because the hospitals are so driven by what's approved by the Food and Drug Administration and the USDA and where those guidelines sit right now. And they sit with the food pyramid, which is just horrible. And it's so repulsive to see what we feed our patients. And it's more repulsive when you've got a patient who is a surgical patient, diabetic, who's having amputations done. And we're sitting there feeding them pudding, and we're allowing them to have a regular soda, and we're allowing them to have all these carbohydrates on their plate, and it's repulsive. And I wish there was something more I could do. I would love to be part of a bigger solution of that. I think it's just going to take a while.
Yeah, I don't know. We've just founded a company, Revero, and that is our goal, is basically doing that. So we're about to kick off here in about a month. We're about a month away from launching. And so we'll start seeing our first patients, and it's going to be all digital. So it's not a brick and mortar type of facility, but it's digital, and we can scale it quite large. I mean, I think there's enough people now that have become frustrated with sort of this allopathic medicine in general, to where I think you're going to see a lot of people going to alternatives, because they're not, like I said, when you go to the doctor and you're tired all the time, they say, everything looks good, labs look good, see you later, see you in 6 months, try to exercise some more or something like that. It's not getting it. One of the things that we've been trying to figure out is there's some people that are doing these carnivore diets, and some of them are they're doing it carnivore plus fruit and honey and quite a bit of carbohydrates. I know you at least experimented a little bit with that. Would you talk about your experience with that sort of experiment?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. And I think it was just that experimental part, like you just said. I just wanted to see how far I could take it and how I would feel with it. And having just a little bit of fruit. They say that the berries are lower in carbohydrates and they won't impact your blood sugar too much. That's no. That's just a hard no. Anytime I've had any fruit pass my lips, it has been awful for me. Within an hour, I can feel my heart rate going up. I've actually checked my blood sugar. My blood sugar just skyrockets and I feel terrible. And then the next day I feel even worse, because now my joints hurt again, and which is mostly my fingers now. My fingers start hurting. Sometimes I'll get some hip pain. Honey, I've only tried one time and knew that was absolutely never happening again. I felt like I literally had just eaten a candy bar is what I felt like I'd eaten. And how can anybody say this is okay? This isn't okay. It's not feasible for me. And so I knew there's just no carbohydrates, just don't mix with me. This past weekend at my son's wedding, they had an oven, one of those brick ovens at their reception. And I have a gluten allergy as well. And so they had made a gluten-free pizza for me. And within an hour of eating it, I had indigestion. I could just feel my blood sugar must have been high. Obviously, I wasn't testing my blood sugar there, but I could just feel it. My heart rate went from, it sits normally between the high 50s and low 60s. Within an hour, it was sitting in the high 90s. And I just know that's all blood sugar.
And just, terrible. You said blood sugar sky. Can you talk about numbers we're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when I was eating some fruit, it would jump up to 140s, 160. And when I am eating strict carnivore, or even with a little bit of dairy, my blood sugar will not go typically above 110.
Yeah.
Rarely. It's pretty stable. I can test it any time during the day, and it's sitting anywhere between 80. And in the mornings, it's a little bit higher, of course, because of that dawn phenomenon, but anywhere between 80 and 90 after I've had a steak meal, some ground beef. So that's all really good for me.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's some people that seem to tolerate it a little better. And it's just because, although you were never formally diagnosed with diabetes, perhaps you were hyperinsulinemic, perhaps even pre-diabetic, but depending on how high that A1C, if it was above 5.7 or so. But so maybe that's one of the distinguishing features, is if you have this metabolic phenomenon, this is just probably not a good idea for you. How has the family responded? Because you said you'd been on all these diets over the years. Are they just saying, here's mom doing another wacky diet, or here's my wife doing another wacky diet. Let's see what happens this time. Obviously, they can't miss you dropping 50 pounds. Or 40 pounds or whatever it is. That's hard to miss. So what's been the reception of you with the rest of the family?
My family is awesome about this. My son was actually carnivore way before I was. He's had some heart issues. He did his research way before I did my research. And he told his cardiologist, hey, I'm going to do this carnivore diet. And his cardiologist is actually from Chicago. And he was like, yeah, go for it. He goes, I completely support it. And all of his cardiac issues went away, which was awesome. And he's pretty much remained carnivore. I think just probably because of his age, he is okay if he goes and has a normal meal. I don't want to say normal meal. That's terrible. But if he goes and has a standard American diet meal, he's able to bounce back from that pretty quickly. I don't. So he was obviously super supportive. And then I ended up in January, I gave my whole family this challenge. I'm like, hey, Connor's wedding is in June. In celebration of World Carnivore Month, I want us all to just go for it. Let's do it. I want you guys to be on board with me. So I started sending my whole family videos. I had sent them your videos, Dr. Chafee's videos, you name it, I sent it to them. I wanted them to understand how beneficial this could be to their health. My middle daughter definitely took off the most with it. She's lost probably about 40 pounds, and her girlfriend has lost probably about 45 pounds. And they have never felt better. They feel so good. My oldest daughter had just had a baby last year, and she ended up doing it for a little bit. She lost probably about 20 pounds. My mom remains low carb. She doesn't eat carnivore, but she eats low carb. So she's done really well. She's lost probably about 20 pounds herself. And they're fully supportive of it. They think it's like great. And I still, till this day, send people videos like, hey, you need to watch this, look at this. And we're able to have good conversations around it. So everybody's super supportive, which makes my life super easy.
Yeah, and good for you like I said, because when there's a solution where you see somebody struggling, you said, hey, there's probably a fix for this. It's funny, I had the UPS guy come up to me the other day. He's delivering packages at my house, and I could tell he's a little out of shape and overweight, probably about 50 pounds overweight. And he actually recognized me. Hey, aren't you that nutrition doctor? I said, hey, yeah, come on. So we had a chat. And last night at jiu-jitsu, I was wrestling with this kid he's 30, and he's my weight, but he's about half my height, and his weight is not distributed the same way mine is. We were rolling around, and he's huffing and puffing, and I could tell he's just not feeling good. I said, hey, let's talk about nutrition a little bit. And so hopefully it'll get him motivated. But it's a lot of fun when you can impact somebody else's life for a positive, and then you just see them getting healthier. It's really exciting. As a nurse, either as a practicing floor nurse or as a nurse administrator, how much sway are you even allowed to talk about diet? Because you have dietitians on the floor that they're the ones that designed it, at least the therapeutic diets. My grandma can give dietary advice to whoever will listen to her. But as far as regulatory type stuff, I know there's lines drawn, particularly within a hospital. Doctors, depending on the state, you can prescribe diets. I had to. Every time I did a post-op order, I had to write a diet order. So I was literally prescribing diets every time I operated on somebody, at least if they're an inpatient. So what happens if a nurse is saying, hey, Mrs. Jones, I see you're diabetic and you just had your foot come off. Maybe that pancakes with syrup might not be a good idea. How much discretion do you think's out there for that stuff?
I think it's probably one of the hardest things as a nurse. And my son's a nurse as well, and he's an ER nurse. And we talk about this all the time together about how frustrating it is that we can't just flat out tell a patient, like, listen, can I just give you this piece of advice? Because it's so against everything that's written in the hospital nutritional guidelines. It's the same thing with schools. Right now, I'm in that transition where I'm still a school nurse at this point, and the school diets are just repulsive. When I see the menus come up on my screen, I'm like, really? We're feeding our kids Cinnamon Toast Crunch in the morning and a prepackaged cinnamon roll, a Dannon yogurt, and juice and chocolate milk. That's great. I'm so happy they're starting their morning off with 500 carbohydrates. That's great. That's so healthy. And it's repulsive. And that's the same thing with the hospital. Patients get to pick what they want on that menu. And when you look at that menu, it's the same thing. They get an option of chocolate milk. They can have a soda. They get to pick what they want, that pancake and that syrup. And yes, there may be eggs and bacon and maybe a sausage on there as well. But most of the time, they're not going to pick that option. And it's just these guidelines are just driving healthcare and education right now. And it's horrible. And I wish that there was definitely more discretion where a nurse could say, hey, can we just talk? But of course, it's not supported by the current guidelines. So that's just not going to ever happen. I don't want to say ever, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. Yeah,
Nina Tycho's been admirably with her Nutrition Coalition to try to influence the guidelines. And they've put together evidence and top world-class scientists and researchers saying, hey, there's at least low carb should be an option for X, Y, and Z condition. And they put all this evidence in front, and the guidelines committee just ignores it and continues to do it. And they look at the conflicts of interest on these dietary guidelines commissions, and they're all tied in with these processed food companies. So it's really a kind of a frustrating thing. I know when I had patients in the hospital, for the period of time where I was advising nutrition for my patients, I'd have an inpatient. I just tell the spouse, hey, bring your own food in. Don't eat the hospital garbage because you're not going to be able to stick to your diet. Bring your food. And they would do that usually. But it really is a sad situation. It's like going to a pharmacy. If you go to a pharmacy these days, half of it is junk food and the other half is drugs. And the reason you need this is because of this. It's so incredibly obvious there.
Terrible. Even I have a new doctor here, and since I moved back to Bakersfield last year, but my new doctor, even she was drawing labs on me, and my triglycerides are perfect. My LDL is high, and it has completely freaked her out. She's been very supportive of my diet choice. But the last visit, she said, I really need to advise you that you need to go on a statin. And I said, I'm really going to advise you that I'm going to decline that prescription. And I said, I absolutely know what you have to stick in my chart. You're going to be charting that you discussed all this with me and I'm declining. And she goes, I absolutely have to. It's part of our guidelines. And it's so ridiculous. I'm like, I told her, I said, I really need you to dig into that research on LDL. I said, there is nothing supporting that LDL is going to increase my risk for cardiovascular disease. Nothing. She goes, I'll look into it. But that's frustrating for me. I'm like, I am not taking a statin. I'm not going to do it. There's no reason to. My blood pressure was 101 over 58. At that point, when I stepped on the scale, I was 151 pounds, and every other lab was absolutely perfect. Yeah, and you still want to stick me on a statin? No.
It really is a frustrating situation. And there, like I said, within the gut, there's de-risking. American Heart Association will allow that AC score can be used as a de-risking metric. So you can say, okay, maybe that you don't need to worry about aggressive statin therapy if all other factors are good. And it sounds like they were for
I found this on the web for hey, CAC score can be used as if you're risking.
Sorry, somehow Siri got activated.
That's pretty funny.
I don't know what I did, but it did that. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I know there's research being done right now, and it likely is going to show that people in your situation with low HDL or high HDL and low triglycerides and normal weight, normal blood pressure, and good cardiometabolic markers, but with the only exception being the elevated LDL cholesterol or ApoB for that matter, are not developing disease. And the problem is we use these population metrics and we assume everyone fits into this cookie cutter algorithm. And you're like, not everybody that's walking in the doctor's office eating a carnivore diet or even a low carb diet. In fact, 99% aren't. And so you just kind of lump everybody together. So it can be very frustrating. And as a nurse, you know your way around the system, you know the ins and outs, and you probably feel comfortable defending yourself. But the average person going in there, they're really intimidated because there's a big power dynamic when this relatively big educated doctor comes in there and you're just a layman that doesn't have much of a medical training and they tell you got to do this and this. A lot of them get scared and they do it. And sometimes it's to their detriment. Statins now with the new medication that's out there, they're showing that, hey, actually statins have about a 20% complication rate in these muscle injuries, and insulin problem or diabetes problems are really there, where they denied it for about 20 years. And now they're finally conceding that's going on because they got a new drug. So it really is frustrating. You'd mentioned, obviously, so, the cancer seems to be gone. There's first negative biopsy. Just let me ask you just a few more, if you can go into a few more of the details, because you'd mentioned Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune condition. Has that resolved as far as you can tell, or what's going on with that? And what other things have you noticed overall, like mental health, things like that?
So Hashimoto's has not resolved yet, and it will. I know it will at some point, but not yet. My labs still are showing that I need to maintain my current dose of my Synthroid. I'm hoping at some point it will decrease or it will resolve, but not yet. We did try to wean me off my dose probably about, 8-9 months ago, and that was not going to happen. My thyroid levels just went crazy. So that has not resolved, but I'm okay with that. But the other things that have definitely clarified, like brain fog is like a real thing. And you don't realize what a brain fog you're in until you're out of it. And then you're like, wow, how in the world was I functioning? I also think there's a real thing with being addicted to carbohydrates. As a hospital executive, we always have candy laying around, always, because when we go do rounds on our staff, and what are we handing them? We're handing them candy all the time. And of course, who's digging in the candy was me. I'm like, oh, a little for you and a little for me and a little for you and a lot more for me. And so I think just that's gone. I can now walk past a candy dish and never even think twice that I want to dig in that candy dish. There's one sitting on one of the counters in my office right now. I walk past it every day and I never have even thought twice that I want to grab a piece of that candy. The joint pain is probably one of the biggest reliefs, though. Both my knees have been torn, and I've broken both of my feet as an adult, and I have injury to my right hip that I tore my right hip. I'm I do these crazy obstacle course races, and so that's where most of my injuries have come from. But those have gone. I have not required any surgery for my knees. My feet have pretty much, I think they feel so much better. And the only thing, I can't wear high heels anymore, but whatever, I don't need to be wearing high heels. It's kind of a dumb thing. But the hip pain was probably the biggest thing, because that would keep me up at night, because it would just hurt so bad that it would just be shooting from my hip, lower back, all the way down my leg, down to my calf. And that's gone. It's pretty rare that I ever feel that hip pain. The only time I ever feel it is if I eat some carbohydrates, like this weekend at my son's wedding. I could feel the hip pain on Saturday night and Sunday. Woke up yesterday morning and it was finally gone. So I resolved pretty quickly this time. But the joint pain's pretty much gone. The arthritis in my fingers, it was really devastating to be diagnosed with arthritis in your 40s. It was weird. My mom and dad both have arthritis. And so I just thought it was just this hereditary thing, but they were diagnosed later in life. And so for me to be diagnosed at 40s was pretty devastating. My joints to my pinky finger and my ring finger, they're humongous. They're really big. And then a couple of years ago, my index fingers both really started getting some big joints. And those are the only two fingers that remain painful. Not all the time, but occasionally they'll get a little swollen. But the other fingers are all better. The joint swelling has gone down in them. They look almost like normal fingers. So that's huge for me.
It's interesting as an orthopedic. The reason I went into orthopedics because I didn't want to deal with the lifestyle stuff. I was like, give me a broken bone, I'll throw a plate on it or run a rod down there and they're good. And that held up a lot for trauma. But 80% of my clinic was honestly all the arthritis, all the tendonitis, all the peripheral neuropathy was all, in retrospect, lifestyle related. And it is all impact. I'm clearly convinced that most of the arthritis, including osteoarthritis, is largely impacted by nutrition. And I've seen so many people, just like you, they stop hurting. And it's because we see so many people around us. You get to be 50 and everybody's walking around with a bad back and a sore knee and everybody's, I'm just getting old. And it's, maybe you're not, maybe it's diet. And it seems to be the case. And so it's interesting to see. So you said you're about to start your new career. Is that correct?
All right. Correct. Yep.
Yeah. We'll see how it's hard to, like I said, to not at least say some things.
I know.
When you know this stuff.
It is going to be hard. It is. It was even hard when I was in the hospital world. I'm still really good friends with the head. She was the head physician over our hospitalist group and really good friends with her. And I would talk with her. I'm like, why can't you guys just do something? And I would try to and even encourage, this is what I'm doing. And you can just tell it's just there's just so many barriers out there for the providers, even just not being able to cross that hurdle of being able to promote a different type of diet. And it's just weird because it just doesn't make any sense to me. Let's go ahead and give a diabetic all of these sugary foods and just cover it with insulin, knowing that insulin's just going to increase their weight. And it's just so frustrating.
Yeah, I can remember writing insulin sliding scales. And I, as an orthopedic surgeon, that's not my field. Especially, I was like, hey, man, help me with this sliding scale because I'm not used to this stuff. And it always used to worry me a little bit because I was like, I didn't really understand much about it. And I never thought, well, maybe let's not feed them sugar and we won't need to do all this. But it is very interesting to say the least. What, as far as you mentioned, you were a sugar addict, which I think a lot of people truly are. There's some people that deny it's an addiction, but I think if you look up the definition of addiction and you list the qualities about doing things that you know are harmful to you, but you do it anyway, there's a point where you realize this is not good for me, but you keep doing it. That falls into the category of addiction as far as I'm concerned. How has this diet specifically compared to any other diet been as far as, like you said, you can walk by the candy bar now, but have you found that profoundly, I guess, liberating? Because a lot of people go, it's a restrictive diet, but I find it to be a very freeing in that regard. What is your thought on that aspect?
No, I like that word liberating. It's so nice to not feel like every function I go to revolves around food. It doesn't feel like, because especially when you're going to a party or you're going to Christmas holidays, I would always be like, oh my God, am I going to be able to stop eating the chocolate? Am I going to be able to stop eating the candy dish? Am I going to be able to stop eating the dessert? And to be able to go to a function now and not have my thoughts completely 100% revolving around food and actually being present with my family and my friends, it is liberating. I like that word that you used. It is definitely liberating. And I don't even think twice about it. It's okay for me to say no because people will still offer, would you like one? No, I'm good. Thanks, though. I appreciate it. And I don't even have that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll just take one. Because I know if I take one, it's not going to be one. It's going to be 20, 30. No, I'm good. I'm good with it.
Yeah, that is the concept of abstention versus moderation. And I think there's food that is just generally designed not to be moderated. I think that's intentionally. I had a gal who worked for the food industry as an engineer, designing a food engineer, and her job was literally design food to be as addictive as possible. And at the end of her career, she felt bad about that, and she actually offered to come work for us. She said, just for free, because I want to make amends for the awful stuff that I've done. So we have this food that is literally designed by design, on purpose, designed to addict us. And it's clear that's what's going on, and we see the results of that. Are you going to have, like I said, I know as a nurse on the floor, you can't go to the patient and say, hey, don't eat this stuff. It's garbage. It's killing you. But do you think you can have an impact on other providers around you, like the nurses that are junior to you? You can say, hey, look, this is a nutrition place, at least to educate the providers. Because I have to ask, whenever I get someone who has changed their diet and changed their life, I say, hey, a lot of them are like, they get frustrated with the doctors. I don't want to go see that quack anymore because he was wanting to put me on all these drugs. I don't want to be. I said, go back and just tell them. Just be another. Eventually, someone will wake up. Because I woke up literally once. What really turned it on for me was I was putting people on low carb diets already, but just to lose weight because we had to have them lose weight for the surgery, and it was effective. But the thing that really blew me away was they were saying my knee doesn't hurt anymore, and I was like, then we better cancel your surgery. You don't need it. And that to me was a point that the light went off on my head. It says, wait a minute, if their knee's not hurting anymore, we don't need to do surgery. That's a good thing. It's a good thing as far as the patient's concerned. The hospital has a different opinion because they like the income generated from all those surgeries. But do you have a plan to say, hey, this is how I'm going to corrupt all the staff around me?
You know what? It's been, even where I'm currently working, and even my previous job when I was chief nursing officer up in Washington, it definitely impacted people. They were watching. They were seeing what I was doing. One of my really good friends that I work with, her and I ended up becoming accountability partners through the journey. She's not carnivore. She's more on the keto lifestyle, but we really are and still till this day, we're still accountability partners for one another. And then here in Bakersfield with the job that I'm currently at, I've had people ask me questions because they're watching. They see what I'm eating every day. And that's all you're going to eat? It's just steak? You eat steak every day? Yep, that's all I'm going to eat. And when you start to explain to them health benefits of it and the why behind it, today, I was thrilled today. I actually had a coworker who came up to me as I was walking back into my cubicle with my lunch. And she said, I'm getting ready to go out. And her contract's coming to an end for the summer. And she said, I think I'm going to try this. What do you think? And I said, you know what, if you could just eliminate right now the seed oils and the processed food, that's a start. I said, and then start moving into other things because I know she's really passionate about her vegetables and her fruit. I said, but eliminate those two things. And I said, and if you really want to just go for it, I said, just try it for the rest of the summer. You've got 6 weeks off. Just try it. Go hardcore with it. I said, you're going to be amazed at how good you feel. And I think she's almost there. She said, I think I might give it a try. And I told her, I said, I'll be in contact with you. I can help you. I can guide you. I can send you. Even there was something I had said today. I can't remember what it was. I said, I can't really explain to you the why behind it, but I'll look it up for you because there's still so much I'm still learning too. But I know I've had a couple other coworkers ask me about, really, why is that all that you eat? And I spread that message to them about, listen, and let me just tell you about where I was and where I'm at now. And it's hard for them because they don't know me as 196-pound Jenny. They only know me as this Jenny. I said, I was 196 pounds a year and a half ago. I'm not 196 pounds now. I'm full of energy and I don't have pain anymore and I don't have cancer anymore. And I'm not pre-diabetic anymore. And I'm not. And I've had a few people get a little upset with me about it because they're very pro vegetables and pro fruit. But I think the message is getting there. I've never been more thrilled to have a coworker come, like I said, the one that came up to me today and asked me about it. I'm like, oh, thank goodness. If I can just impact one person at work, that would be great. And as I move into this new job, it will be the same thing. I will be able to explain to people, hey, this is why I'm eating the way that I'm eating. When I had my very first interview with this organization over lunch, and I had ordered a double hamburger with just the cheese, no bread, no bun, no French fries, no salad, no nothing. So it was just 2 pieces of beef and a slice of cheese. And they had asked, oh, is that all you're going to eat? And I'm like, yeah, I'm carnivore. This is all I eat. And they're like, oh, that's cool. And they didn't ask any other questions why. I know it will come up at some point, and I can't wait to share with them the message.
Yeah, good for you. Because like I said, it's just, if you just influence 2 people in your life, and then they all do that, then eventually that exponentially grows and grows until you have a significant number. And I, as someone who's been at this from the very beginning of this sort of modern carnivore movement, it's grown phenomenally. I see what's happening on social media, and this is a regular finding. 5 years ago, no one even thought about a carnivore diet. Now they're saying, well, if you're vegan or carnivore, they're accepting it as a actual lifestyle choice. Now, many people don't agree with it, but they're accepting it as a legitimate thing that people do. Of course, there's always you're going to have heart disease, and it's going to cause you to get cancer and you have scurvy and all the stuff that doesn't actually happen. But that's a battle that we'll just have to fight on and on until the brainwashing is complete, maybe however long that may take. But anyway, interesting. Do you do any like social media type stuff? Is that part of your thing? Okay.
I do. I've got Facebook and I have Instagram, and it's a combination of both my personal life, but then I'm very open on there about my carnivore journey as well. So people will see that, like, I'll post a picture about the steak. I was very honest when I was heading down this cancer path and was changing my diet. I was very clear with everybody on my social media. This is my lifestyle. I'm eliminating carbohydrates. I'm eliminating sugar. And then when I started moving more into that carnivore world, I'm like, I've eliminated vegetables and I've eliminated fruit. And this has definitely been a big part of my change in my health. And people see that. Like I said, I'm an obstacle course racer. When I go to races, people are like, wow, you've lost so much weight. And I've maintained it. I'm not doing this yo-yo thing anymore, which is fabulous. But yeah, no, I'm very clear on my social media what I'm doing.
Yeah, good for you. I think it's important that people know this. And that's one way that's one tool that we have that so far has made a pretty big difference, because 20 years ago, no one would hear about it. You literally, no one would hear about it outside of your immediate people. It's hard to reach around the world like we can today. So it's really interesting in that regard. As far as, so your cancer diagnosis, often the 5-year point is considered you're cured more or less. You're still being surveilled since you did have a positive a year or two ago, and now it's been negative. What is the plan with that?
So my next biopsy will be in September. And then I was thrilled because after my first diagnosis in 2017, I was having to have a biopsy every 6 months, which was good because obviously that's how they caught it the second time. And now we're able to move to she said between every 8 to 10 months. So around September, I'll have my next biopsy. And then we'll just see where I'm at from that point. If I'm still benign, then we can probably move to yearly visits, which would be great. I would love that. It would be nice. It's not a very pleasant biopsy to have, so I would love that.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah, I can imagine it's not pleasant, but I'm glad that you're doing well and they're still surveilling. Just a couple last few questions. You're not eating any fiber of any sort. Can you go to the bathroom? People say, oh, you can't go to the bathroom. You're going to be constipated all the time. What's going on with your bowel habits? Has that gotten better or worse, the same?
Oh, my GI, because like I said earlier, I have gluten intolerance, and I've always had stomach problems. Ever since I was a kid, I've had stomach problems. And when I was younger, they would tell me it was because I was lactose intolerant. Went into adulthood thinking I was just lactose intolerant. And I was in one end of the spectrum or the other. I was either super constipated or I had super bad diarrhea. There was no happy medium for me. When I moved into the carnivore lifestyle, I did experience that diarrhea that a lot of people do experience, but it resolved pretty quickly. I want to say probably within 4 to 6 weeks. And I know that probably sounds like a long time for some folks, but I was okay with that because of how good everything else felt. But now I have a bowel movement every day. It's totally normal. And if I don't have one, I don't freak out because I know I'm not constipated. I just look back at the previous day, like, how much steak did you eat? If I didn't eat a whole lot, because that's one thing I'm sure I've heard it on your videos before, and many other people say, sometimes you're just not very hungry. And I'm not going to eat because I'm not going to eat just because I want to eat. So maybe the day before, maybe I didn't eat as big of a steak as I normally did, or maybe I didn't have quite as much fat as I did the day before that. And so I consider my bowel movements completely normal now, and no more belly pain. My bloating in my belly is completely gone, which is so nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these things. You said a lifetime of gut issues. Was there ever a time when your physician said, it's just normal, people have gas and bloating, it's a normal thing? Was that kind of normalized for you even among physicians?
It was, yeah. I remember they wanted to do a biopsy on me oh gosh, I can't remember what year it was. It was probably like 2010, 2011. It was when they had actually knew that I had a gluten issue. I just went off of gluten just to try it and felt so much better. Not great, but still better. And they wanted to put me back on the regular gluten diet. And then they were going to do some biopsies to see if I had celiac disease. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. Just no. They're like, just avoid gluten. But nobody ever said, maybe you need to be looking at other foods as well. So nobody ever, I would say, oh, my belly's bloated. It hurt. Oh, are you having a bowel movement every day? Nobody ever wanted to do anything about it.
Yeah. Another question about a lot of people will say, I can't do this diet because it's too expensive. Do you find it relative to what you're eating before to be equal, less, more?
I honestly would say less, because when you look in my refrigerator, I have eggs and heavy cream and butter. There's nothing else in there. Maybe some LaCroix water. That's about it. There's nothing else in my refrigerator. And then you look in my freezer and it's just meat. And then if you look in the pantry, which is behind me, there's nothing in there but my electrolytes and salt. So I don't buy anything else because I don't need anything else. Yes, people will say it's so expensive, but no, it's not really more expensive, because when you are buying things like chips and you're buying the processed food and you're buying all the lettuce and the vegetables and the fruit, that's expensive. And then you think about how many times you've had to throw away all those vegetables because they've ended up rotting before you eat them all. No, I think it's actually less. My food bill runs probably around, I would say around $400 to $500 a month, which I don't consider that bad at all. It's actually very equivalent to what it was when I was eating the standard American diet.
Yeah. Yeah. So $125 a week is certainly pretty nominal for the average American, I'd say. Some people obviously are going to think that's a lot, but it's definitely within the reach. And you could even do it cheaper if you wanted to, with just straight up ground beef and some eggs, and you could literally do under $10 a day with just ground beef and eggs for many people. Except somebody like me who eats like 4 pounds a day. I've got a high appetite. But so your social media, if you don't mind, share your social media handle so people that are interested in following along and your cancer journey and maybe learning more about your sort of adventure.
Absolutely. So for my Instagram, it's Jenny, and all lowercase, _ Spartan. Spartan, because that's the obstacle course racing that I do. And then my Facebook is Jenny Metler, Metler. And then my last name, Culbertson, Culbertson.
All right. I'm going to go follow you and I just found you, and I'm going to follow you back. It looks like you're a private account, so I guess you'll have to give me permission. But anyway, Jenny, thank you for taking the time out for doing this with us, because it's great. And I'm sure somebody's going to hear it and get inspired. And thanks for doing what you're doing just in general and advocating. And hopefully, like I said, you're in a position to maybe have a little bit larger impact than some other people might have. And good luck with the hospital systems and the healthcare system, because we need more advocates, because it's an important issue. And gosh, if I think about how much money we spend on healthcare in this country, and the results they're certainly not where they should be, for sure. So anyway, thanks a bunch.
Thank you. I'm grateful for everything that you do. You have definitely been a key part in changing my life. So thank you.
It's my pleasure. It's great to hear about this and meet the people, either virtually or in person, that I've been able to have a little influence over. So anyway, thanks a bunch. The rest of you guys, thanks for being here. We'll be back tomorrow morning. Thanks, everybody. Jenny, thank you. Bye-bye. Hey, folks, it's Dr. ShawnBaker here. If you guys are enjoying these success stories, you can become your own success story. You can do that by heading over to carnivore.diet. You can sign up for a free 30-day trial and get started today. We're looking forward to supporting you. Our community is wonderful, and we'd love to see your success.